Hi everybody, welcome back to the Highland Financial Advisors video series on things you should think about if you're going to be interviewing or starting a relationship with a fiduciary financial advisor. So here at Highland Financial Advisors, we have a very clearly defined process, which I talked about in the first video, and I suggested questions to ask and things to look for in an advisor relationship. In the second video, I talked to you about fees, things that you should be aware of, costs that you could incur, and the difference between focusing on fees as a cost and thinking about the value received and what may be a reasonable fee for you. So if you haven't seen those, please go back and watch those videos. And if you'd like to subscribe to the series down below to follow it, you'll be alerted to any new videos that come out. So today, let's assume that you've gone through that process, you've asked good questions, you understand the fee structure, you believe you're going to get good value for that. So let's assume you either start a relationship or you're going to start doing some initial planning on your own. So what is the first thing that you should expect someone to do with you in that relationship? I could tell you now that if the first thing out of their mouth is to talk to you about investing your money, you need to stop them and say, shouldn't we talk about my goals and my financial planning before selecting investments? Because there is a direct relationship to that, and your portfolio should be dependent upon the goals that you set up. So I don't know how anybody can invest a portfolio and then go back and do planning and then go back and say, oh, maybe we should change your portfolio. So be aware of that, even if you're doing this yourself. So the first piece of this, the first beginning piece of financial planning, we call discovery in our process. It's basically goal planning. And I remember back when I started in the business in the early 90s, and we wanted to talk to people about financial planning. There was some very basic financial planning software out there, or people did it on Excel spreadsheets. But the basic financial planning software, and many of these are now free to be used on the internet. You can do some of this yourself. Those were all based on a questionnaire that was designed to ask questions so that you could fill in the necessary inputs into the software that was generating a report. Now, that report was nothing more than something called a capital needs analysis. And all they would do, they asked you a lot of questions, but there was only 2 or 3 questions that were relative to that. And number one thing was, when do you want to retire? How much money do you need income-wise when you retire? And what were the assumptions for inflation, maybe? You know, there was like 3 inputs. And with those 3 inputs, somebody could put that into a computer and come back and tell you, based on how old you are now, when you want to retire, how much money you have now, how much money income you need when you retire, and what you think inflation is going to be. They would come back and say, okay, in order for you to reach your goal by that date, you're going to need to acquire this much money. And that's a very simplistic way of looking at financial planning. And that's really what most people did. Matter of fact, even today, we've had prospects come in our door and they brought us these reports. And we've looked at them and they are overly simplistic. Boilerplate, basically, the difference between one report and your neighbor's report probably is not that different. There's nothing personalized about it. And that's one of the things that we at Highland believe that is value added, and that's certainly the responses we get from our clients, is that they feel they're getting a very personalized wealth management. If you've ever put together a jigsaw puzzle, if you open the box, spread all the pieces out on the table, and you start looking at the pieces, what is the most important part of that whole puzzle? Well, the thing that's the most important is the cover on the box, which shows you the finished puzzle. Because without that in mind, without knowing the future result of your puzzle putting together, without having that as a picture in your mind, it's very hard to then start to identify how pieces would fit together to get to that result. And that's really what financial planning is. If the advisor you're with is not spending time with you on understanding and helping you to discover the life that's calling to you through a series of questions and conversations. That is the most critical fundamental part. We call it the part of financial planning that's built around a vision for your future. You know, there's a quote from the Bible that says, without a vision, the people will perish. You can think of Moses leading the Israelites for 40 years through the desert. What was the one thing he kept telling them over and over again? You're going to see a land of milk and honey. That was their vision. That was their vision of a freedom, land of milk and honey. Kept them going for 40 years. Well, it's like that with financial planning. If you don't have a vision for the future you're trying to create, you're bound to make bad decisions today. But by filtering every decision through that vision, that is the difference for many people on really adopting their plan, sticking to it, and making good decisions. I've said this before, but where you find yourself today is the culmination of thousands of decisions you've made in the past. Now, you can't go back and change that, but you do have the power within you, and we believe a vision helps to start making decisions today that's going to build the future that you want. We don't want anybody to ever end their life with regrets. And it starts with that conversation. So that wraps it up today, talking about goal setting. And I really want to highlight the importance of really getting into the qualitative aspect of a discovery process to identify goals, as opposed to a quantitative data gathering sheet where you just answer some questions and there's really nothing relative to your life in that. We found that people want to connect to goals. They don't want to connect to numbers and things like that. So again, I really appreciate you reaching out and watching this video. If you'd like to click the subscribe button below or go to our website at highlandplanning.com. We always offer a free phone call, an initial consultation. You can schedule one right on the website. So this was an introduction to goals. Watch for the next video because we're going to go deep into the questions we ask that helps to really explore and discover that life that's calling for you. We've taken those questions. They are not our questions. They're actually copyrighted by the person who's considered the father of financial life planning, George Kinder. He is the leader of the Kinder Institute of Life Planning, and we are authorized to use those. And I'll be sharing those questions and how you can use those in your planning process, whether with an advisor or with a couple. Thank you for tuning in.